Let's start to add some of the wear and tear detailing and a little bit of that high-tech, sort of like sci-fi detailing on our objects. So first, let's go and add our wear and tear. And what we're going to do is actually add a C4D noise. You can use any other noises that create like turbulence or anything like that. For this one, I'm going to use the C4D noise. And you can see sort of what we're getting as a result when I plug that into here. And we're going to actually use this as a mask. So I'm going to go into our noise drop down and let's change it to our blistered turbulence. So now we're getting that sort of Gaussian turbulent thing happening there. And let's increase the contrast of that up to 100%. So we're getting those nice crisp edges from the white to black. And let's increase the global scale to like 1000. So we're getting big areas of that worn out detail. And to make those detailings a little bit more interesting, let's increase the octaves up to 20. And you can see we're starting to get a little bit more detail in those. And let's pull the high clip back. Now we're creating a little bit of just like islands of that wear and tear. And you can kind of play with like the seed, just get something that'll like work good for our scene here. I'm going to plug my Toon shader back into the Arnold Beauty. And let's just drive this into our mask color edge detection here, where we plugged in our shadows. And you can see now we're getting these sort of little islands, almost like grease buildup or something in our scene. So you can kind of like go through and like play with some of these settings to get like how much wear and tear you want to have. It doesn't exactly have to be like these settings exactly. Every scene will be different based on like the scale of it. So we might have to adjust the global scale to be a little bit different from mine. But what we want to do now, let's actually duplicate this, Control C, Control V, and we'll have this second one. So I'm going to keep this one as my big one. And let's start to make some super fine little bit of dirt islands and stuff like that. So let's go in here and let's actually adjust the global scale down to like 50%. So you see we're getting like a lot of little details. And let's just find a spot with our high clip. And you can see we're getting a bunch of like little specks and dots and stuff. And it just helps give it a little bit more of that gritty look. We can maybe even drop the global scale down a little bit more. And you might have to adjust this once we get to a proper size of our scene, because some of it just might not be showing up right now because of there's not enough pixels that make it show up, because it's just like a testing working size right now. I'm actually going to like drop it lower to like 20%. Now we're getting a bunch of like nice little like dots and stuff happening here. And what we can do now is blend these two together with a mix node. So we're getting both of them to show up at the same time. So let's go into our search bar and type in mix, and let's drag out a mix RGBA. And then let's plug in one into input 1, and let's plug the other into input 2. Then we plug this chain into our mask color edge detection. And now we're getting a blend of both of our noises together. So let's say we want this grease stain to darken our scene a little bit. So what we can do now is drive it into our sort of color chain here with a multiply node. So let's add another multiply node there. And let's plug the end of our chain into that guy. Input 1, and then let's plug this multiply back into our emission color there. Let's grab another ramp node because we'll want to adjust this noise from being like black and white. And let's plug this into our ramp node. We won't need to have the other one to be multiplied just because the islands are always just way too small. It'll never show up, so there's almost no point in doing that. So I'll just plug in our big noise into that. So I'm just going to drag the output into our multiply node there. And you can see because it's still black, we're getting like these full black islands now. So actually take this and increase it way up. And you can see now we're getting like little darker patches, little grease stains all over our scene. And if we wanted, we could take this and maybe give them a little bit of like a greasy feel maybe. Might be like going to like a green just so it gives it a little bit of that feel. Or something like that. It doesn't have to be too dark because with the outline, it actually makes it feel a lot more present than having like this thing being like way dark, and then it just kind of starts to unbalance your scene color palette a bit. Let's add in some of that high-tech detailing now. So what I'm going to use are these sort of like grayscale, high-tech, just random squares and lines and stuff. These things are great for getting that sort of like hyper detailing on your stuff. And you can see I have things from like just like simple panels to like this like tight little like crispy details that we'll use for some of our objects here. And then we got like some nice just clean ones. Just a nice mix of everything. I'm going to drag out this guy here. Just drag and drop it into our network editor, and it'll automatically add an image node for us. So let's mix this into our noise here. So let's actually grab another mix node. And let's plug this existing mix node into here. Let's plug into input 1. And then let's plug this guy into input 2, our texture node here. And so let's plug that into our mask color. And you'll see right away we're starting to get our toon lines to draw around all of these edges. And it starts to create all that super small detailing with our toon lines because it's drawing lines around all the different pixels it sees here. So it's good to have like these kind of images with just like flat color fills. And yeah, you can see sort of how that results there. So what I'm actually going to do is let's go over here to these guys. I'm just going to shift click all of that and let's just change it to cubic. And now we're getting a little bit more of a uniform result with that. And then we can go into our texture here. We can go in and change the UV coordinates to have like a good base for us. Oh, we want to go the other way. I just want to like shrink it down a little bit, so our texture is scaled up to be a little bit bigger. And right now, it's kind of showing up with everything, all those little details in our scene, and we don't exactly want that to happen. So what we can do is add another ramp. You can see how like these ramp nodes are pretty much my favorite to use, just because you can just like quickly add them, adjust something, and then you're just good to go. So I'm just going to add that in there. And let's start to take our whites and pull them down to black. And as you can see, when I do that, it starts to take out some of that detailing. And it kind of starts to bring it to like a good balance of those like hyper details in there. Something like that might work pretty good. It also feels like these interior lines are starting to have too much presence over our scene. So I'm just going to go into our toon shader, into our edge area here, because we have silhouette turned on. We just bring the width scale down a little bit there. And it starts to bring down the thickness of all like these hybrid detailings, but still keeps the thickness of our silhouette objects to help just separate them from the scene a bit. So maybe we can bring it down a little bit more there. It's just about finding like a good balance of that. We might have to adjust this once we scale up our scene resolution, but this should work good for now. So we have this like crispy, like high-tech detailing. And for some of the materials I'll start to develop as we develop our color palette and materials, we'll use some of like the more detailed ones for like all our like engine parts, or just like areas where we want a lot happening in like a focal point. And then we could use like this cleaner panel ones for like our scaffolding and just like walking areas and stuff like that. So now let's bring our shadows back into here. So we're drawing that toon line around our shadows again. So it's the same thing as before. Let's grab our mix node, drag out a mix RGBA, and let's add this into the chain of stuff. So I'm just going to add my shadow adjusted node into there. And now we're drawing that shadow line back into that. So now we have pretty much everything set up for our shader. We have our toon lines drawing around our shadows. We have our sort of wear and tear with the toon lines drawing around that. And we're driving some like high-tech detailing with our texture here. And we have the ability to adjust how much we want to show up with this adjustment ramp node. If we want to like start to like bring more back into it or pull more out because there's too much details in a certain area of our scene. So the last thing I want to quickly do is let's adjust our toon line color. And to do that, I'm actually just going to grab another ramp node and plug that into here. If you're having troubles trying to like click and drag, you can just like zoom in and it'll make the icons bigger or the little like ports bigger. I'm going to add that into our edge color, and let's drag out another one and let's add it into our silhouette color because I want my toon lines all to have uniform color. And for this guy, I'm not going to have a different color for my shadowed areas, so we can actually just remove that guy there. And then we have our sole color picker for our color, edge, and silhouette. And having it as a node rather than just going into here and changing it just makes it a little bit more just approachable, because we don't have to go into here and change these things separately. We can just click this node and start to adjust it to where we want to have it. And so for this guy, I'm going to actually do like a nice dark purple. I'm just going to find like a nice dark color. And instead of using a black, this sort of like purple outline just helps bring like some saturation and sort of like vibrance to our scene. Even though it's like almost like black. So maybe we want to pull a little bit more towards that red there. Or something like that. You can choose like any color that you kind of want for your scene based on like the color palettes you chose. For now, I'm just going to keep it here, and then if I wanted to change it later, I can always go into my shaders and just give it a quick change.
Okay, now that we have our shader set up, we now have everything we need to start building out our scene in the next lesson.